Hey everyone, and welcome back to Be Free Cycling.
It's great to be back.
Today we're doing a deep dive into the Feisike handlebar bike mirror.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, this thing looks pretty interesting.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at the Amazon product listing for it, as well as a briefing document our team put together.
Okay.
And then we'll also be taking a look at some customer reviews to see, if this thing really lives up to the hype.
All right.
So while you're here, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the world of cycling tech.
Please do.
Okay, so let's get into it. This Feisike mirror. It's not your typical mirror.
Yeah, right off the bat, this is a full-blown rear-view camera system.
I know, it's like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
A camera mounted on the back of your bike, and it sends a live feed to a screen that's mounted on your handlebars.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
What do you mean, huh?
Definitely have that wow factor. But, we should probably look beyond the flashy tech and think about the practical side.
So the product description, it really emphasizes safety.
Okay.
It says that the monitor is going to help you see vehicles and other bikes coming up behind you.
Yeah, which, let's be real, can be a pain in the neck.
Literally.
Yeah, literally.
And, looking over your shoulder all the time, especially in busy traffic, it can be pretty risky.
Oh, for sure.
So the Feisike mirror is trying to solve that problem by giving you a clear view of what's behind you while you keep your eyes on the road ahead.
That makes sense. So how is it performing in the real world?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are the customers saying about this thing?
Well, I took a look at the Amazon reviews, and it seems like it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Really?
Yeah, there are definitely some people who are like totally enthusiastic about this Feisike mirror.
Okay.
They say it's easy to install and that it works as advertised, and it just makes them feel so much safer on the road.
That's great. I was looking at the reviews too, and a lot of people seem to really like the night vision function. They say it's incredibly helpful for riding in low light.
Definitely a big plus for safety.
Yeah. Huge.
There's even one customer that said, had it on bike in minutes, works great, has good battery life, and a clear picture, night vision turns itself on automatically. Definitely feels safe.
That's a glowing review.
Yeah.
But I imagine there's another side to this, right?
Yeah, there is. Some customers had some issues with the picture quality.
Okay.
Some found it clear, but others were complaining about glare or low brightness.
Yeah, those picture quality concerns are important to consider. And I saw a few mentions of the wide-angle lens and how it can be a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's a 145-degree lens, so you do get this super wide view.
Okay.
But then some reviewers said that makes objects in the distance look really small and harder to judge.
Yeah, that's pretty common with wide-angle lenses.
Okay.
You get that panoramic view, but then you also have to deal with some distortion.
Right. So wider isn't always better in this case, I guess.
Guess not.
But what about the durability? The gadget. It's going to be exposed to the elements.
Yeah, good point. From what I'm seeing in the reviews, it looks like the durability is another one of those things where people just have different opinions. Some customers found the mounting clamps sturdy, but others thought they felt kind of flimsy.
Yeah, one person said, feels sturdy for plastic, but they are thick, oblong, and require a bit of clearance to fit them.
That's not great.
Doesn't sound super sturdy.
No.
And plus, some reviewers had concerns about the cords.
The cords.
Yeah, how long they're going to hold up over time.
Yeah, for sure. That's something to think about, especially if you're going to be doing some serious riding.
Yeah.
In all sorts of conditions.
And speaking of things that might cause concern, the battery life.
Oh, yeah. How is that?
That seems to be another point of contention.
Okay.
Some riders were really happy with how long a charge lasted.
Yeah.
But others said that it drained way faster than they were expecting.
So it really seems like we're seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
For every positive, there's a negative.
Right.
I guess what works for one person might not work for another.
Absolutely. What really stood out to me in the reviews, though? A lot of people were saying this camera shouldn't actually replace your traditional mirrors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it should just be a supplement to them.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's one reviewer that said, I would recommend not getting rid of your mirrors and relying on ANY camera as your sole means of watching what's behind you. Think of the camera as a supplement to your mirrors and giving you a broad view of the area immediately behind you.
That's a good point. It almost seems like there's a reason why people are saying that.
What do you mean?
Well, if you think about it, relying only on a camera for your rear view, it kind of creates some new vulnerabilities.
Oh, okay.
Like what happens if the screen malfunctions or the battery dies when you're out riding?
Oh.
Suddenly you don't have that rear view visibility, and that could be really dangerous.
Yeah, that's true. It's like putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder how much we should really rely on technology for something that's always been handled by human awareness and simple tools like mirrors.
Hmm. That's something to think about. It's like we're trying to get rid of blind spots, but are we creating new ones in the process?
That's a good way to put it. And even if the technology works perfectly, we have to remember the human element.
Right.
Like, are we so used to looking at screens that we might actually miss things that are happening in our peripheral vision?
Yeah, it's like when you're so focused on your phone that you walk into something.
Right.
Or worse, you step into traffic because you're so engrossed in this digital world that you're not paying attention to what's right in front of you.
Yeah. And we can only process so much information at once.
Hmm.
So if we're overloading ourselves by looking at a screen, it's possible that we could miss other important information.
For sure. And we also have to think about the potential distractions that a screen can create.
Oh, yeah.
I can already see people trying to change the settings while they're riding.
Yeah.
Or even watching videos on that 4.3-inch display.
Oh, no. When they're supposed to be focused on the road.
Exactly.
Yeah, it seems like the potential for misuse is there. It's almost like we need some new etiquette rules for these devices.
Right. Yeah. Like, thou shalt not stream Netflix while cycling.
Haha. Yeah, exactly.
But, speaking of rules and regulations, is there a legal aspect to this? Like, are there any laws about using cameras as rearview mirrors on bikes?
That's a great question, and I'm honestly not sure.
Yeah.
I would imagine it varies depending on where you are,
Right.
but it definitely brings up the whole issue of privacy.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if your bike mirror is basically a camera, what's happening with that footage?
Yeah.
Is it being recorded? Is it being stored somewhere who has access to it?
It's crazy we're so used to cameras being everywhere now that we forget to even ask those questions.
I know it's easy to just not think about it when the technology is being presented as something that makes our lives easier and safer.
Exactly. But like we've seen with this Feisike mirror, even when the intentions are good, there can be unintended consequences.
So where does that leave us?
I think it really shows how important it is to think critically when it comes to adopting new technologies.
Right.
We can't just assume that something is good or bad based on how it's marketed.
For sure.
We have to really look at the pros and cons and ask ourselves the tough questions about what could go wrong and what the unintended consequences could be.
Yeah, and speaking of things that could go wrong, let's not forget how tempting shiny new tech can be,
Oh, yeah. It's so easy to get caught up in that.
especially when they promise to solve all our problems.
But as we've learned today, sometimes those solutions actually create brand new problems that we didn't even consider.
Exactly. And when we're talking about something like this Feisike mirror, where safety is the most important thing, we have to be extra careful about those downsides.
Absolutely. It's so easy to get caught up in how cool something is, but we have to remember that safety is more important than having the latest gadget.
For sure. So let's do a quick recap for our listeners before we move on. We've got this Feisike handlebar bike mirror. It's an interesting piece of tech, and it could have some benefits.
Yeah, it could increase your awareness of what's around you, which is really helpful in traffic, and it could help reduce neck strain. But we also have to consider the drawbacks.
Right. We talked about the mixed reviews on the picture quality, the potential durability issues, and those concerns about the wide-angle lens that makes things in the distance look smaller, plus the whole question of whether having a screen might actually be more distracting and create new blind spots.
And we can't forget about the bigger picture questions of privacy and data security when we're basically attaching cameras to our bikes.
Yeah, so is it a game changer or a gimmick?
I'd say it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
The technology is definitely innovative and it could improve cycling safety, but just like any tool, it has to be used responsibly and with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Well said.
And maybe this deep dive has encouraged our listeners to think more critically about the tech that they use in their lives, whether it's on a bike or in a car.
That's what we're all about here, encouraging curiosity, critical thinking, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Now, before we move on, there's one more point I want to touch on. We've talked a lot about the negative side of this technology,
Yeah.
but it's important to remember that this is also a step toward a future where cycling could be safer and more accessible for everybody.
That's a really good point. If we can find ways to deal with the risks and address the privacy concerns, this type of tech could be really revolutionary, especially for people who might not feel comfortable or confident relying just on traditional mirrors.
Imagine a world where all cyclists, no matter their age or ability, could have this extra layer of awareness and protection.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe this little bike mirror camera is a small step in that direction.
It's definitely something to think about.
Ah.
And that's what the deep dive is all about.
You know, it's really fascinating how this little gadget has opened up this whole can of worms about technology and safety and even our relationship with the world around us.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like we thought we were just talking about a bike mirror camera,
Yeah.
and now we're having this much bigger conversation.
Exactly. And I think one of the most interesting parts of this conversation is that question of privacy.
Yeah, definitely. We've touched on it a little bit, but it's worth diving deeper into it.
For sure. I mean, we are talking about a device that's basically just a camera on wheels.
Right. Where does all that data go?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't
Yeah.
it? And unfortunately, there's not always a clear answer.
Right.
With this Feisike Camera, we'd have to really get into their privacy policy and see what they say about how they're using the data and collecting it.
Yeah. And even then, those policies are usually so hard to understand.
Yeah.
They're written in all this legal jargon.
Right. It's almost impossible for the average person to know what they're agreeing to.
Yeah, for sure. But it's really important to be aware of this stuff. You know, I mean, we're just surrounded by all these devices that are collecting information about us.
It's true.
Our movements, our habits, even our faces.
It's kind of like we're living in a digital panopticon.
Yeah, and even though some people might say, oh, I have nothing to hide, it's not really about that, is it?
No, it's about control.
Yeah.
It's about having the right to decide what information we share and who we show it with.
Exactly. And when it comes to something like this bike mirror camera, I think we have to ask ourselves, is it really worth it?
Yeah. Is the convenience and the added safety worth the potential risk to our privacy?
Right, because that's a trade-off that we're making.
Yeah, and that's a decision that each person has to make for themselves.
Right.
But I think it's so important to talk about these things and just raise awareness about it and demand more transparency from the companies that are making these technologies.
Yeah, I totally agree. We can't just keep accepting every new gadget that comes out without thinking about the implications.
Speaking of implications, there's another angle to this whole bike mirror camera thing that I've been thinking about.
Oh, what's that?
I'm wondering what kind of impact this is going to have on cycling culture.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
How do you mean?
Well, if you think about it, cycling has always been about being in the moment, you know, connecting with your surroundings, using your senses to experience the world.
It's a very visceral experience.
It is. It's like the wind in your hair, the sun on your skin.
The sound of the tires on the road.
Exactly. And when we bring screens into that, it's possible that we could lose some of that connection to the physical experience.
It's kind of like the difference between hiking in the wilderness and watching a nature documentary.
Yeah.
They're both enjoyable, but they're totally different ways of interacting with nature.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that these cameras are going to ruin cycling.
Right.
But I do think we should consider how they might change the experience in a subtle way.
That's a good point. It's like we're always trying to find that balance
Yeah.
between embracing new technology and holding on to the things that make these activities so special.
And it's not always easy to find that balance.
No, it's not.
But it's so important if we want to use technology to make our lives better without losing the things that make us human.
That's a great way to put it. So let's bring it back to this Feisike mirror.
Okay.
And maybe start wrapping up our deep dive.
Yeah. So where do we land on this thing? Is it a must-have for all cyclists, or is it something that people should think twice about?
I think after everything we've talked about, it's kind of in between.
Okay.
It is a cool gadget, and it could make you safer when you're riding, but it also has its downsides.
Yeah, we're still not sure about the picture quality and the durability and the battery life.
Right. And then there are those ethical questions about using a camera instead of your own eyes to see what's behind you.
But it's hard to argue with that extra layer of awareness, especially for people who might not be as comfortable using traditional mirrors.
For sure. So seems like the main takeaway here is that this Feisike mirror is a tool. Just like any other tool, it could be good or bad, depending on how it's used.
It really comes down to us and how we choose to use it.
Yeah. And whether we're willing to acknowledge and try to minimize the risks.
And like we've been talking about in this deep dive, those risks, they go beyond just the person who's using the camera.
Right. We talked about privacy concerns and the potential for distractions and even how technology can change our experiences.
It's amazing to me that we're talking about all of this because of a simple bike mirror camera.
I know, right? It's pretty incredible.
That's what makes these deep dives so great, though.
Yeah, we get to really explore these topics and uncover the complexities
And hopefully come away with a better understanding of the world.
and a desire to learn even more.
Exactly. So, to our listeners, we want to say, don't be afraid to question the new technology that's always coming out.
Yeah.
Do your research, weigh the pros and cons, and make decisions that are right for you.
Because at the end of the day, the most important technology we have is our own brains, our ability to think critically and make choices that benefit us and the world around us.
Well said. So on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the world of bike mirror cameras.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those wheels turning. You know, it's amazing to me how we started with just this one product.
Yeah.
And it's turned into this huge discussion about the role of technology in our lives.
It really goes to show how everything's connected these days, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
A simple bike mirror camera can lead to these big conversations about safety and privacy and what it even means to experience something.
And I think that's what makes this duck dive so interesting. You know,
Yeah.
it's not just about this one gadget.
No,
It's about these big questions that are shaping our world.
absolutely. And these questions, they don't have easy answers.
No, they don't.
And that's why it's so important to be open-minded and talk about these things and consider all the different points of view.
Mm-hmm. And to be willing to admit when we might be wrong.
Exactly. And that's where our listeners come in.
Yeah, we'd love to hear what you think about all of this.
What are your experiences with these bike mirror cameras?
Yeah, do you think they're a good safety tool or are they more of a distraction?
And what about your privacy?
Yeah, are you concerned about the data security aspect of it?
We want to hear from you, so head over to our website or join the conversation on social media or even send us an email.
Yeah, we really want to know your thoughts and perspectives.
Because at the end of the day, this is much bigger than just one product or one technology.
Right. It's about how we as individuals and as a society are dealing with this ever-changing digital world.
And that's something we're all figuring out together.
So let's keep talking about it. Let's keep learning from each other.
Yeah.
And let's try to build a future where technology is used to help people in a responsible way.
Well said. I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive into the world of bike mirror cameras.
So until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those wheels turning.
See you next time.